Class, welcome back. We are still talking about the Civil Rights Day, and we are talking about the Emancipation Proclamation today. It was a big step in civil rights for and for freeing slaves during the Civil War. Uh, it's also a big step in civil rights. So that's what we're talking about today, and it was issued by President Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War, and it did not free all slaves at the time. It was only about 50,000 slaves that it freed, but in the long run, it freed all slaves after the Civil War was over. So, all right. The Emancipation Proclamation was an order that was issued by Abraham Lincoln to free the slaves on January the 1st, 1863.
What was it? The Emancipation Proclamation was an order by Abraham Lincoln to free the slaves given on January 1st, 1860.
Cut off, didn't it? All right. All right. Were the slaves immediately freed? No, they were not immediately freed. It ain't like he just ordered it and they said, oh, we're just going to let everybody free. No, that's not how it worked. He did this during the middle of the Civil War, which means the North was fighting the South at the time. And the Emancipation Proclamation, it had limitations. It only freed the slaves in the Confederate states that were not under Union control. But nobody listened to it. Nobody paid attention to that. They did not listen to it because they were in the middle of the war with them. So there were some areas in border states where slavery was still legal, but they were part of the Union, and the slaves in these states were not immediately freed. There's only, like I said, there's only about 50,000 that were actually freed at the time of the 4 million slaves. For the rest of the southern states, the slaves would not be free until the Union was able to defeat the Confederacy.
Were the slaves immediately freed? No, only about 50,000 of the 4 million slaves were immediately set free. The Emancipation Proclamation had some limitations. First, it only freed the slaves in the Confederate states that were not under Union control. There were some areas in border states where slavery was still legal, but were part of the Union. The slaves in these states were not immediately free. For the rest of the southern states, the slaves would not be free until the Union was able to defeat the Confederacy.
So, like I said, they didn't kind of ignored it. He did it. They ignored it because they were at war with him, and they looked at him as not their president at the time. So, the Emancipation Proclamation did eventually set millions of slaves free, and it also made clear in the near future that all slaves should and would be set free. So it allowed for black men to fight in the Union Army as well. There's about 200,000 black soldiers that fought on the side of the Union Army and eventually helped the Union win the Civil War.
Immediately freed continued. However, the Emancipation Proclamation did eventually set millions of slaves free. It also made clear that in the near future, all slaves should and would be set free. The Emancipation also allowed for black men to fight in the Union Army. Around 200,000 black soldiers fought on the side of the Union Army, helping the North win the war and also helping to expand the area of freedom as they marched through the South.
All right. So Lincoln said, okay, I don't want to just do this. I don't want to set up this Emancipation Proclamation and order it just for any reason. Okay. He said, I need support from this. So he said, I need a major victory during the battle of the Civil War battle in order to have the full support behind the emancipation. So if I issue it without that, it's going to fail, and I don't want that to happen. So he waited until the Union Army turned back Robert E. Lee's advancement in the North, and at the Battle of Antietam on Antietam. I'm sorry about that, Antietam. All right, on September 17th, 1862, he said, okay, well, it's time now. The initial announcement came September 22nd, 1862, that, hey, we're going to make an announcement about the Emancipation Proclamation, but it wasn't until January when it happened.
Major victory needed. Lincoln felt like he needed a major victory in order to have full support behind the emancipation. If he issued the order without public support, it might fail, and he wanted to be sure that it was successful and seen as a major moral victory for the North. When the Union Army turned back Robert E. Lee and the Confederates in the Battle of Antietam on September 17, 1862, Lincoln knew it was time. The initial announcement that the Emancipation Proclamation order was coming was given a few days later on September 22nd, 1862.
All right. The Emancipation Proclamation was an executive order, but it wasn't the law. Okay, it was given by the president, and it was ordered to set all slaves free, but it wasn't the law. But it did pave the way for the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, and the 13th Amendment took a few more years to get passed by Congress and implemented. It was done in 1865. It was adopted and became part of the United States, and it said, hey, all slaves should be set free. All slaves are free now. That's what the 13th Amendment said.
The 13th Amendment. The Emancipation Proclamation was an executive order. It wasn't fully law per the Constitution yet. However, it did pave the way for the 13th Amendment. The advantage of the proclamation was that it could happen quickly. The 13th Amendment took a few more years to get passed by Congress and implemented, but on December 6, 1865, the 13th Amendment was adopted and became part of the United States Constitution.
All right, here's the wording of the 13th Amendment. It says that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for a crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States. So no more slavery at all, unless it's as punishment for a crime. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Those are the words of the amendment.
13th Amendment wording. Here's the wording of the 13th Amendment. Section 1. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime whereof the party shall been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Section 2. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation.
All right. Comprehension question. Who did the Emancipation Proclamation free? A, slaves, B, no one, or C, Abraham Lincoln? It was slaves. It was issued by Abraham Lincoln, but it was supposed to set slaves during that time free. It only said about 50,000 out of 4 million free, but it was an order by Abraham Lincoln.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner.
There's also a war strategy, which I didn't get into, but it was also that. Number 2, how many slaves were immediately set free? A, 1,000, B, 1 million, or C, 50,000? It was C, 50,000 or so were set free immediately. The rest had to wait to the end of the Civil War.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner.
Number 3, who ordered the Emancipation Proclamation? Who said, hey, we want all slaves to be set free? It was the president. Was it A, Jefferson Davis, B, Abraham Lincoln, or C, Robert E. Lee? It was B, Abraham Lincoln. He was the president of the United States.
Ding, ding, ding.
During the Civil War. Number 4, the Emancipation Proclamation led the way for what amendment? A, the 13th Amendment, B, the 20th Amendment, or C, the First Amendment? It was the 13th Amendment that was finally set in stone and set all slaves in the United States free.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner.
Now, why did Lincoln wait to sign the Emancipation Proclamation? What did he want? Did he want to just be mean? He wanted full support from people and didn't want it to fail, or C, because he could? It was B, he wanted full support from everybody. So he waited to a big victory against Robert E. Lee at the Battle of Antietam. And when that happened, that's when he did it.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner.
All right, class. I will see you back next time. We'll be talking more about civil rights. And you all have a very good day.